Hey, welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis, and this week I'm going to be bringing you a magnificent 7 of underrated live albums. Now, since I'll be discussing underrated live albums, you won't be seeing any of the usual suspects that people talk about when they discuss live albums, or kind of live albums. Instead, I'll be bringing you a heaping helping of underrated live LPs. So buckle up, because we're going to have ourselves a rock and roll party tonight. I said no. Hey, if you're enjoying the bands that I'm bringing you, please do me a favor and click the like button and be sure to ring that notification bell. And if you would like to support the channel even more, please consider joining my Patreon. It's at patreon.com/popculturegraveyard. And thanks. Up first, you guys like rock, surf, pop, punk music? It's right here. Hall Raker by the Descendents. This was a tough choice between Hall Raker and Liveage, as both of these LPs are pretty damn exciting. Each LP documents the same July 1987 concert, with Hall Raker adding songs from an April show. But none of the songs on one album are repeated on the other, so both of these albums taken together give you an exhaustive view of the band, an all-encompassing view, if you will. Liveage is one of the greatest live albums ever, in any genre, featuring great sound, fiery performances, and a killer set list. But since I'm here to champion the underrated, I'm bringing you Hall Raker. The performances are equally exciting, and the sound quality is just as good. The band put out Hall Raker at the request of fans, who felt like Liveage left out too many cool songs. Hall Raker's set list is an eclectic batch of songs that are absolutely thrilling to hear live, mixing classics such as Kabuki Girl, Pep Talk, and Good Good Things, with offbeat favorites such as Global Probing, Jealous of the World, Christmas Vacation, and My World, which come alive on this record in a way the studio versions simply hint at. This version of Hurtin' Crew is a thrash rock workout, played at such a speed that I would dare any speed metal band to cover it. I am always in awe of Bill Stevenson's drumming, especially when he's locked in with the underrated Carl Alvarez. Edgerton's guitar work here is stellar, alternating between pop-punk perfection and heavy metal crunch. As for Milo Aukerman, I feel he is criminally underrated as a lead vocalist. And when he's singing live, you can especially hear the everyman quality his voice has, sort of like a punk rock Ray Davies. Just listen to his impassioned vocals on the 1-2 punch of Good Good Things and Cheer to hear what I'm talking about. Listen, if you don't own a live album by the Descendents, get Liveage. But if you already own Liveage and think you own all the live Descendents you'll ever need, you're wrong. Up next, Paris au Printemps, or as they would say in New Jersey, Paris au Printemps, aka Paris in Spring, by Public Image Limited. This was released in November of 1980 and is a criminally underrated scorcher of a live album. This lineup of Pill is not very well documented, and it catches them, arguably, at their creative peak. Pill's creative leaders, John Lydon and Keith Levine, are their usual genius selves here, pushing the musical boundaries for which they are known. But this is the last Public Image Limited release to feature their wonderful bass player Jah Wobble, and it's a shame that Jah left because his loopy, dub-infused bass lines fueled some of Pill's most gloriously off-kilter music. Another thing making this album very unique is that the two concerts from which it was culled, on January 17th and 18th of 1980, were drummer Martin Atkins' very first live gigs with the band, and he does a fantastic job here. Martin would later go on to play with Ministry, Killing Joke, Nine Inch Nails, and he'd later form Pigface, but his entire wonderful career started with Public Image Limited. I feel this album's reputation has been unfairly tarnished by its origin story. Much is made of this album being a cash grab, with John Lydon taking £30,000 from the record company simply for turning in a reel-to-reel recording he made off of the soundboard. But quite frankly, that tape caught lightning in a bottle. The performances are uniformly great, far more exciting than the album versions, especially my beloved Careering, Pop Tones, Attack, and Lowlife. And what's truly sparking these incendiary performances is the concert's dangerous atmosphere. For lack of a better term, This is Pill's Metallic KO, in that you can hear true antagonism between the crowd and John Lydon, whom you can clearly hear saying everything from a simple shut up to threatening to walk off the stage if the crowd doesn't stop spitting at the band. Pill created some of the most inventive and thrilling music of the 80s, and this 1980 release bears witness to that fact. Up next, Who's Got the 10.5 by Black Flag. This was released in March of 1986, and it captures the band live at Starry Night in Portland on August 23, 1985. As I mentioned back in my West Coast Punk episode, which you can reach by clicking above, Henry Rollins is not my favorite Black Flag vocalist. He's third and occasionally fourth on that list. But by the time of this album, the band's sound and material fit him like a glove, and he seems to finally be reveling in how comfortable he is as the band's frontman. Rollins' most charismatic moment happens during the breakdown for Gimme Gimme Gimme, when Henry begins to jokingly refer to the size of each band member's member. The boys all clock in at rather meager lengths before Henry gets to female bass player Kira, who it turns out has got the 10.5, which is referred to in the album's title. And Kira is such a badass, I don't doubt it, euphemistically speaking. I, like most punk fans, had a huge crush on Kira Rossler, and I hate the fact that there are no pictures of her on the back, especially since she's the only aesthetically pleasing member of the band. There's one tiny postage stamp-sized Kira on the back, but she could have really been used to pretty this album up. In any case, the set list here is fire. Are the kids still saying that? And features some of my all-time Black Flag favorites, such as Loose Nut, Bastard in Love, My War, Slip It In, and Drinking and Driving. Underrated drummer Anthony Martinez would prove to be the last drummer, reunions aside, that Black Flag would ever have, holding down the drum chair from 1985 to 1986. No, he's not Robo, or Chuck Biscuits, or Bill Stevenson. Wow, Black Flag had some great drummers. But Anthony Martinez is locked in, and the band is tight as hell. In my opinion, this is the best Black Flag on vinyl you are likely to hear. About 11 years ago, Black Flag released a couple of shows they did with Chuck Biscuits in San Francisco in 1982, but those are digital files. On top of that, the performance is a pretty sloppy affair. The live 1984 album is not bad. The album started as a cassette and was later remastered by Greg Ginn for CD. So you don't want that one on vinyl. This unassuming release boasts superior sound to both of them and features a very tight outfit and an even tighter set list. Listen to Bastard in Love off of this album and tell me if I'm wrong. Up next, Press Eject and Give Me the Tape, Bauhaus, released in 1982. Bauhaus are so renowned for their moody, atmospheric studio albums that I think people forget what an electric live act they truly were. When the drums kick in on the opening song, In the Flat Field, holy hell! Bauhaus boasts one of the best rhythm sections in post-punk / goth / whatever the hell genre you want to name. Unlike a lot of the live albums I'm mentioning, this album, culled from 3 different gigs taped years apart, has the feel of one cohesive concert. That in itself is a triumph, but the performances captured here are passionate as hell. On the track Dancing, Peter Murphy's manic vocals intertwine with Daniel Ash's saxophone skronk over some of the rhythm section's most propulsive work. This LP features one of the best live performances of Bela Lugosi's Dead, all 9.5 minutes of it, and I prefer it to the studio version. Kick in the Eye grooves harder than anything the band has ever done, and highlights what a gift they had in bassist David J. This performance of Stigmata Martyr is downright frightening in its intensity, and album ender Dark Entries is the only way that this LP could end, with this goth band's most punk rock song. If you're coming new to Bauhaus, the studio albums are probably your best introduction. But if you already love what you hear on their studio albums, this stellar live set is exactly what you've been looking for. This next one is a twofer. First up, Destination Love, live at Cold Rice, by The Makeup, released in 1996. This is the quote-unquote live debut album by The Makeup, a band with some of the greatest grassroots hype of any band since the MC5. What's absolutely brilliant about this album is that it's not live. Let me explain. This album takes the wonderful line about Kiss Alive, it's as live as it needed to be, and takes it to the nth degree. In other words, it's a wonderful fake-out. and I'm including it here to make a point about live albums. You're never sure just how live they truly are. So if a band can create the illusion of a live atmosphere, what's the difference? It doesn't matter if the music on Kiss Alive was ripped straight off of the soundboard and immediately pressed onto a record, or if it was taken into the studio, cleaned up and overdubbed a million times. All that matters when you crank up the stereo is that it creates the illusion that you're at a great concert. Mission accomplished. As for the makeup, they preached a wonderfully convoluted, sweat-drenched gospel of gobbledygook known as Gospel Yeh Yeh, whose sole ambition seemed to be to make little punk rock kids in the DC area feel like James Brown. A worthy endeavor, to be sure. Simply listen to this album's version of Here Comes the Judge, They Live by Night, and My Beloved Evidence Is Everywhere, and judge for yourself. As for their actual live album, After Dark, it is uncanny just how perfectly Cold Rice anticipated its sound. This was released in February of 1997 and features a show taped at the Garage in London. These live versions of songs such as Gospel 2000, Don't Mind the Mind, and my all-time favorite makeup song, Makeup Is Lies, will convert even the most skeptical among you. Vocalist Ian Slavonius gets the lion's share of attention, and rightfully so, given his charismatic importance to the band. But make no mistake, it is guitarist/organist James Canty who truly drives this music machine. And when playing live, his musical inventiveness is on full display. The tight rhythm section of Michelle May and Steve Gamboa provides a rock-solid bottom, over which Ian and James trade a treasure trove of hooks and homilies. After Dark is an underrated document of an underrated band, putting on an underrated performance. Check it out. Yeh Yeh. Up next, Extraterrestrial Live. Blue Oyster Cult, released in April of 1982. Yeah, I know. You're too cool for Blue Oyster Cult. But they were one of the greatest live acts in this country for 2 decades, and they prove it here. When a band chooses to open a live album with a track called Dominance and Submission, you know you're in for a wild ride. By the way, my favorite part of Dominance and Submission is when you can hear Albert Bouchard scream, "Here we are, Poughkeepsie, New York!" Crowd pleasers Cities on Flame and Godzilla really deliver the goods. And my beloved The Red and the Black, a track so cool the Minutemen covered it, is laid down with such authority I'm ready to call this version definitive. Side 4 sees the band go supernova with one of the best sides of any live album, with the tracks Veteran of the Psychic Wars, ETI, Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and Don't Fear the Reaper. Buck Dharma's solo on Veteran of the Psychic Wars is, in my opinion, the greatest solo he's ever performed. And this live version of Don't Fear the Reaper is everything you want it to be. It's faithful to the studio version, it's easy on the ears, it's a longer length, and it's atmospheric as hell. The fact that the band had to fire their original drummer, Albert Bouchard, and replace him with their roadie, Rick Downey, right in the middle of the tour from which most of this material was taken, is astounding. The band is beyond tight, and the setlist is an eclectic mix of BOC favorites and offbeat choices, such as a blistering take on Roadhouse Blues featuring guest guitarist Robbie Krieger. Lots of BOC fans prefer one of the 2 previous live albums, On Your Feet or On Your Knees and Some Enchanted Evening. But for my money, this 2-disc set has them beat, both performance-wise and especially setlist-wise. This features Blue Oyster Cult at their absolute peak, and they would never be this great again. One final fun fact, this was the last Blue Oyster Cult album to be featured on 8-track tape, so this marked the end of a musical era in more ways than one. And finally, Les Bains Douches, Joy Division, or as we might say in America, Les Bains Douches. This Joy Division concert was recorded live in Paris on December 18, 1979, but didn't come out until the spring of 2001. Walking a thin line between bootleg and official release, this was put out by Get Back Records, which is an Italian label that likes to put out things on red vinyl. Get Back has a real hit-or-miss track record sound-wise, but this is a definite hit, as the live atmosphere of this recording is very forgiving sonically. This night sees a road-tested Joy Division in peak performance mode and features a killer set list, including Disorder, Love Will Tear Us Apart, Insight, Shadow Play, and Transmission. And that's just side 1. Incidentally, this LP features all 9 tracks from the December 1979 Paris concert, whereas the CD version tacks on songs recorded the following month in Holland, which are quite frankly of a lesser quality, so stick with the vinyl version. This bootleg, much like the Preston Warehouse gig from February 1980, is an essential document for any Joy Division fan, and proves that Joy Division's legacy was not all built on doom and gloom, and this album goes a long way towards reclaiming their reputation as a sizzling live act. Don't sleep on this. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Underrated Live Albums. If you did, please do me a favor and click the like button, and do not forget to subscribe, and I will see you next week with a lot more cool stuff.